This is Tess Tucker reading Daughter of a Dead Woman by Tess Tucker. Chapter 1. 19 years after the previous section. 0BBY. Fields of Benair on the planet Dantooine. Tess Naberi woke up to an unusual quiet with a sense of something coming in the back of her mind. Slowly she allowed herself to open her eyes. Her small room was as she left it, the hay-colored walls matching the golden light of the Dantooine sky that peeked through her windows. She could see the 2 moons of the planet she had called home for the past 2 years from her bed, giving her the assurance of familiarity needed to make her forget her worries from moments ago. The green fields of Benair awaited her right outside her small cottage-like home if she wished to entertain herself with a walk through the extensive pastures, which would eventually lead to an exploration of the ruins of the Jedi Temple nearby. Despite her 11 years of age, Tess had quite a childlike curiosity. She had grown up sheltered by 3 different guardians, her current one a middle-aged woman named Annie, and knew little of the world that she didn't explore on her own. Dantooine was remote and consisted mostly of fields and little technology that would give her a peek into the outside worlds, but Tess learned all she could from the very few people around her. Her guardian would share with Tess the many stories Annie's uncle had helped pass down, stories of the Jedi who lived in the ancient Jedi Temple, which was once a sight to behold, illuminated by a power of the Force that Tess had concluded was no more than a myth now. Tess would beg Annie to continue her stories into the late hours of the night, but the guardian would leave and Tess would have fascinating dreams to finish the stories. She dreamt that she joined the Jedi Order over 3,000 years ago, took her Jedi oaths, and fought with them to destroy the Jedi-turned-Sith Darth Malak with her lightsaber in hand. But there were no dreams to reminisce about this morning. Today was one of the rare occasions where her mind seemed to stay silent all throughout the night. Tess finally pulled herself out of bed and slipped into a dark blue tunic and dirt-colored pants that matched the Dantooine soil. She could smell the lingering aroma of a delicious breakfast waiting for her in the main room of their little college. "Good morning, Annie," Tess sang as she untucked her long dark hair from the collar of her tunic and sat at the table where her breakfast was already in place. Annie turned around to smile at Tess, her beautiful green eyes shining beneath the slight crinkles of age around them. "Good morning, Tessie," Annie returned. She crossed the kitchen to give the child a kiss on the head before pulling the long brunette locks together for a braid. Of all the guardians Tess had, Twisha, Chid, and Vika, Annie was Tess's favorite. Twisha was an older woman that watched Tess in infancy whom she hardly remembered. Chid was a strict, militaristic man who was more focused on educating her than being the parent-like figure that Tess wanted her guardian to be. He was around from when Tess turned 4 until she was 7. And Vika was a young Twi'lek who was nice, but Tess didn't feel very wanted or loved with her. She only lasted about 3 months before she decided being a guardian was not for her. Then came Annie, a motherly woman who always wanted children. She was a bit overweight, with red hair that she wore up off her neck, and the kindest eyes anyone had ever seen. She was a visitor over the years, a sort of friend of the family as far as Tess's lack of family went. As soon as Vika quit, Annie realized she loved Tess like a daughter already and jumped at the chance to care for the girl. A knock on the door and a voice interrupted the breakfast. "Surprise visit," said a man from outside. Tess immediately recognized the voice. "Uncle Bill!" she exclaimed, running to the door, throwing it open and jumping into the familiar man's arms. Bail Organa laughed and hugged the girl back, stroking her half-braided hair. "I hope I didn't interrupt one of those amazing Annie breakfasts," he chuckled, putting Tess down and guiding her to the table to finish eating. Annie smiled at Bail, then at Tess. "I was going to tell you about his visit today," Annie explained, "but then he insisted that he surprise you." "I'm surprised," Tess admitted, unable to resist going in for another hug. Her Uncle Bail was Tess's favorite person in the world. She didn't get to see him a lot, but he was the closest thing to family that she had besides Annie. Chid once told Tess that it was rude for her to speak of such things, so she never did, but Tess had always wished that Uncle Bail would take her home with him to Alderaan to live in his castle. She had never even been inside it before, even when she lived on Alderaan with Chid. Still, during her exploring, Tess would see the palace and watch the people go in and out. They always wore fancy dresses and robes, whites, pinks, and light blues. Each one could have been a king or a queen. Uncle Bail's wife was the queen before she died, or so Tess was told. And sometimes Tess imagined she was Uncle Bail's daughter and therefore a princess. One time when Tess was relentless in expressing these wishes to Chid, he blurted out that Uncle Bail already had a daughter, a princess, and that he didn't need another one as unintelligent as Tess. Of course, Tess ignored the unintelligent part. She had learned not to care much for intelligence, considering it seemed to make Chid so mean and boring. But the fact that Uncle Bale had a little girl of his own put a halt to Tess's fantasies. Uncle Bale joined Tess and Innie for breakfast, and after a brief study lesson with Innie, which Tess paid particular attention to with her uncle watching, Bale took Tess out on a walk. She told him all about how the fields never ended, much like the seas of Alderaan. She told him about the abandoned Jedi temple, but soon changed the subject because he seemed to tense up every time she talked about it. She told him how much she missed the dresses and the silk of the common Alderaanian fashion, and he promised to bring her back a dress next time he visited her. "Uncle Bale," Tess asked, looking up at the man a bit nervously, "if I ask you something, do you promise not to think it's rude?" Bail Organa chuckled, squeezing Tess's hand. "Well, of course," he assured her. "Even if it would normally be rude, you gave me fair warning, so it doesn't really count." He winked down at Tess, but it didn't give her much reassurance or courage to ask what she was about to ask. She forced herself to just spit it out. "Do you have a daughter?" Not the exact question she meant to ask. Tess already knew he had a daughter, but good enough. Bale was a bit taken aback. It took him a moment to answer. "That was unexpected," he admitted, his expression blank. "Yes, I do have a daughter." "Who told you, Innie?" "No, Chid," Tess confessed. "A long time ago. Sorry." Tess looked down. Bale obviously saw something was bothering her. He dropped to his knees and tilted her chin to look at him. "Tess," he said, "you don't need to be sorry. I just don't want you to feel less special knowing that you're not my only little girl. But you're still my little girl." He gave her another smile, which resulted in just the slightest return from the 11-year-old. "How old is she?" Tess asked. "Is she my age?" "She's older," Bill said. "She's almost 19 years old. She's quite a young woman now. She's even participated in the government on Alderaan like I do. And I can see you creating just as amazing a life for yourself when you're her age. You look almost exactly like she did at 11 years old." That got a smile out of Tess. "Really?" she asked. Bill nodded. She had the same brown hair, brown eyes, same little nose, same beautiful smile. You two could easily be. Their conversation was interrupted as Bail Organa's comlink made a noise. He patted Tess on the shoulder and excused himself as he paced a few feet away to answer the call. Tess could pick out a few words. She what? What happened?" "Winter, slow down. I can't understand you." Oh no. Have they tried to contact me on Alderaan?" "How many?" "I'm on my way back now." At that, Bale returned the comlink to his pocket and took Tess by the shoulders. He could see that his nerves had made her panic. "Tess, everything's fine," he assured her. "But I'm going to need you to go back to the cottage on your own. There's an emergency back at home." Bale tried to leave it at that, but Tess grabbed his hand. "Is it your daughter? Is she in trouble?" she asked, her eyes welling up as her emotions got the best of her. "I don't know," Bill said softly, trying to wiggle his hand out of her grasp. "I have to go now, Tess." "No!" Tess cried. She ran after him as he freed his hand from hers and rushed ahead towards the ship. "Please, Uncle Bale, take me with you! Please, I want to help! I want to help her!" Bill turned around, tears in his eyes, and scooped the girl up into his arms. "I can't, Tess," he sobbed. She had never even seen him cry. It made her cry harder. "I have to go. I love you, Tess." He gave her a kiss on the forehead, set her down, and raced back to his ship. Tess watched him run. She strained her eyes through the golden Dantooine brightness as he became smaller and smaller, and finally as his ship ascended and left the atmosphere. 23 days later, Alderaan was gone, and Uncle Bale went with it. Chapter 2. Tess spent hours crying in her guardian's arms as Innie sadly gave Tess the news that both her Uncle Bale and the planet she once called home were gone. Innie held her and rocked her in her bed, whispering soft, comforting words in the 11-year-old's ears. Finally, Tess managed to get a few words out. "Where am I going to go now?" Tess muttered. "What do you mean?" Innie asked. "You'll stay right here with me, love. Why do you think that would change?" "But, Uncle Bale, He can't pay you, the girl said. Annie brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes welling up slowly. Oh dear, you can't possibly think I'm with you for the money, Annie whispered, hugging her close. Tess, I love you. You're like a daughter to me. I thought you knew that. Oh dear. Annie planted several kisses on the child's forehead and rocked her some more, letting her cry until they both fell asleep. Hours later, after falling asleep in Annie's arms, Tess and her guardian were awakened by a knock on the door. Oh, it's so late, Annie muttered sleepily, pushing herself to her feet and tucking Tess more tightly under the covers. Go back to sleep, Tessie. But Tess was too curious for that. Tess listened intently as the front door to their little cottage squeaked open. She heard the faint mutterings of a few male voices and Annie's, but couldn't make out the words. Then suddenly an electrical hum pulsated through the air, followed by male outbursts, 4 blaster fires, and several heavy thumps as if something fell to the ground. Tess's eyes widened like saucers. Her throat dried up. She wanted to cry out for Annie, but she couldn't speak. However, she didn't need to cry out because Annie rushed in the room seconds later. Annie grabbed Tess's hand and dragged her out of the bed. What happened? Tess asked, caught off guard as Annie forced a tunic over her head. Nothing you need to be concerned about, Annie assured her. She had an odd metal cylinder-shaped device in her hand, which she quickly stuffed in her own tunic. It appeared to be a long, thin can of something. Annie took Tess by the shoulders and looked her in the eyes. Tess, she began in a serious voice, you're going to see something out there that is not going to be pleasant. But I'm going to protect you, okay? I know you have questions, but there will be time for them later. We need to get out of here now. But what, Tess? Annie warned, holding up a finger as if to suppress the girl's questions. Just keep your eyes forward and follow me outside. Tess nodded bravely, her hands shaking. She dutifully followed Annie, but let herself slip into one of her fantasies. She imagined she was an esteemed young leader of the rebellion like she imagined Uncle Bill's daughter would be, the demeanor and poise of a princess, but the courage and strength of a soldier. But no matter how fanciful Tess's imagination was, she could not ignore the severed limbs and bodily remnants that she stepped over when exiting the front door of the cottage. Once they made it outside, the cold Dantooine air met Tess and Annie's faces. As their eyes adjusted to the darkness, they saw a white wall of Empire stormtroopers surrounding them completely. Tess's younger eyes noticed them before Annie did. She noticed the shine of a raised blaster first, too. Annie, wait, look! Tess screeched. Suddenly, a single blaster shot snapped at the air and Annie fell to the ground. Annie! Tess screamed, dropping to her guardian's side. Annie tried to hide the wound on her arm, but blood seeped through her opposite hand that she covered it with. Tears of fear and worry and confusion fell from Tess's eyes. It's okay, Annie muttered, clearly startled and out of breath with pain. She pulled herself to a stand with Tess's help, just in time to notice a man in gray uniform approaching them. For a second, Tess thought he would help them. Unlike the stormtroopers, the fact that she could see his face made him more human and less of a mindless clone of destruction like she once heard a local man call them. As the man in the gray suit came closer, Tess recognized him, but she couldn't yet place a name to the face. Annie beat her to it. Chid, Annie muttered through her clenched teeth. You traitor. Chid couldn't help but laugh. You are one to talk, Annie Fotel, he chuckled. The Rebel Alliance and all its members are the traitors, not the Empire. Chid's eyes shifted to Tess. This one is grown. Tricky, that Organa. Why, she's not even the proper age. But she is the child, isn't she? Annie pushed Tess behind her protectively. I don't know what you're talking about, Annie insisted. Chid rolled his head and straightened his stance as if to show he was bigger and better than her. That dim-wit Alderaanian senator didn't think we would figure it out, but we did. There are medical records to prove it. Hidden, of course, but always accessible for the Empire. She's quite the little science experiment, isn't she? Taken out of Padme prematurely, put into an artificial womb to finish her growth at the slowest pace possible, so that even if we searched every child that was age-appropriate, we would still not find her. But we did, and her father wishes to see her. My father? Tess began. You don't know what you're talking about, Chid, Annie snapped, more angry than Tess had ever seen her. This is an innocent child, and she is not the child you think she is. You've got it all wrong. Striding closer until he was a step away from them, Chid flashed a chilling smile at Tess, then back at Annie. Then you won't mind if we take her to investigate that, he said softly. With fantastic speed and precision, Annie whipped the metal cylinder out of her tunic at lightning speed, and with the press of a button, it hummed into a yellow lightsaber and inflicted a painful and demobilizing but not lethal wound to Tid's chest. "Tess, run!" Annie screamed. Tess didn't need to be told twice. But the stormtroopers closed in on them too fast. Tess had not taken 5 steps before one of them scooped a cold, armored hand around her waist, lifting her straight off the ground. She kicked and swung her body, but to no avail. 2 more stormtroopers helped grab her. One pulled out a thick needle filled with pale yellow liquid. Tess cried out in terror. "Tess!" Annie screeched through the darkness, recognizing the girl's scream. Tess's eyes followed the voice until she saw a circle of stormtroopers surrounding Annie, though the only indication of any was the top of her yellow lightsaber. An eruption of blaster fire seemed to create multiple stab wounds in Tess's ear until the glow of the lightsaber fell. With Annie gone, Tess lost the last strand of anything close to a family that she had ever known.